welcome back to Monster Month, our Halloween spooktacular. I am the Green Scorpion, and today we're looking at the root of all ghost stories. Actual ghosts. The history of ghosts has no origin, as old as mankind itself. At times it was used to describe anything unknown and paranormal, but most popularly for the spirits of those past. Unlike other forms of undead, we think of ghosts as formless, shapeless, intangible, and often invisible. And opposite to a zombie, who's a mindless body, ghosts are usually filled with human-like emotion, just without a physical vessel anchoring them to this world. They can scare the crap out of us, they can just give us a good laugh, or they can help us explore the uncomfortable concept of death. On this list, expect much of the latter category. I'm looking for characters and personalities, eerie powers, and, if possible, intrigue and significance. Because why exercise a ghost when you can exercise your mind? Though the definition of a ghost can be shaky, I'm sticking to things that I know for a fact are ghosts. Some Final Fantasy X characters are up in the air, and lots of characters like Captain Vladimir are implied to be supernatural, but I need cold hard facts. At least as factual as ghost science gets. So get your Proton Pack, Poltergust, or Fenton Thermos ready. We're here to catch the top 10 video game ghosts. I've always been fascinated with how Toru Iwatani invented Pac-Man. These new video arcades are all about shooting. Let's make a game about eating to appeal to a less violent people. And make the character a partially eaten pizza. What, it needs conflict? Okay, how about ghosts? That'll be easy to make in 8-bit, right? Print it! Pac-Man hasn't really strayed too far from the maze, but when it does, you get some interesting stuff. And since it was going to be hard for Blinky and the crew to stand as a threatening presence in the sprawling 3D quest, Pac-Man World 2 appointed a new antagonist, Spooky. Yeah, the name's a little on the nose, but I have to admit, he was legitimately intimidating when little me first played this. It must have been the deep voice or the difference in tone between him and the established joke villains. Spooky once led a reign of terror in the medieval era as kind of a Pac-Land Sauron. Fortunately, he was defeated by a knight named Sir Pac-a-Lot, cute, and sealed under a tree by 5 golden fruits. Blinky's group is fooling around the tree and accidentally free him, so he takes them on as his minions and sends them to deliver the golden fruits to an evil tree called Wormwood, with which he can attain enough power to make everyone ghosts. Do you mean you're transforming them into ghosts, or do you just plan to kill everyone? I'm honestly not sure. With his staff, he's a powerful wizard, and his boss fight is surprisingly difficult. It's those homing fire spells, they get me every time. He's not as iconic as Blinky and the crew, but he is their king, even if they only freed him accidentally, and he's what this game really needed. There's not a whole lot else to say, since this is his only major appearance besides Pac-Man World Rally and Pac-Man Monsters. He hasn't really aged well for me either. I mean, I might just be too old to find him anything but cheesy, but I have my memories. And you know what? Kids need ghosts too. That's exactly what he is, the perfect children's story ghost. A big scary bad guy, but not nightmare-inducing. Kids should have some fun scares without having to jump into Five Nights at Freddy's, you know. With a name like Spooky, you're pretty much getting what you expected. I may have given the wrong impression that this month would be scary, but I've been leaning towards the quirkier characters on these lists. Nothing against horror games, I just usually prefer keeping my blood pressure below 200. Plus, modern horror games prefer monsters of the indescribable variety, not ones that can be easily categorized as zombie or ghost. Still, it couldn't hurt to look at a game that's actually scary. Fatal Frame. It's a pretty clever setup. You're exploring a house full of creepy Caspers and have to defend yourself with a camera. But not just any camera. The camera obscura, which has the power to exorcise ghosts. This means that to defeat enemies, you have to fight your urge to sprint in the other direction and keep perfect eye contact. And your shots are more effective if you get up close, which I don't want to do because I just know it's gonna lunge at me and make a spooky face or something. It's also really hard since Slender burned it into my mind not to look at scary things. In this case, I'm gonna have to make another representative choice like I did with Zomboss and choose a champion for these photo models. My choice? Sae Kurosawa from Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly. You don't know much about her at first, only that this girl in a bloody white kimono keeps taking your twin sister away from you. As you explore the hallows of All Gods Village, you learn that long ago it had a bit of a stigma that twins were just the same soul split between two bodies, like two identical wings of a whole butterfly. To appease the neighborhood hellish abyss, they performed the ritual where a pair of twins were selected, and one would throw the other into the pit. It's okay to do this to twins, apparently, since killing one of them would just bring both halves of their soul together. Good thing this village never had any triplets, that would have blown their minds. Well, Sae was one of these twins, set to be killed by her sister Yae. Yae couldn't go through with it and tried to mount an escape, but Sae tripped, and to her dismay, Yae left her behind. So Sae was sacrificed, but not in the way the Abyss wanted. The town was enveloped in a thick fog, the vengeful spirit of Sae slaughtered all of its residents, and now the place is trapped in a sort of time loop until the ritual can be fixed. So it just so happens that the game's protagonist and her sister are the perfect candidates for the sacrifice. Those were the cliff notes, but the real fun of the game is learning about Sae while simultaneously trying to avoid her and save your sister. She's usually out of reach, possessing Mayu and leading you to the ceremony, but at one point you lose the camera obscura and then she's your best freaking friend, chasing you around the catacombs and asking if you plan to leave her again. She's angry, confused, and I really feel bad for her. But that sympathy only makes her more frightening. And that goes double for her ghost posse. Putting her to rest will be easy. Getting your sister out alive is going to be pretty difficult. Looks like we're talking about Cervantes again. He just checks a lot of boxes. He's a ghost, he's a pirate, and a terrible father. But since we talked about him recently, I can be a bit more concise. Cervantes was actually the main antagonist of the original Soul Edge, or Soul Blade if you prefer, before becoming playable in the rest of the Soulcalibur series. Cervantes was already the Scourge of the Seas before he was possessed by the cursed Soul Edge, and he was so powerful it took the combined forces of Sophitia, Taki, and Siegfried to bring him down. But that was far from the end. During the battle, part of Soul Edge was shattered and the shards became embedded in the pirate's body. When the next wielder, Nightmare, activated Soul Edge, he remotely triggered those shards, resurrecting Cervantes. Now a Wraith, Cervantes was more powerful than ever. Canonically, I mean. He's actually less powerful in-game because he's not a boss character anymore, but story-wise he continued his work collecting souls and searching to reclaim his sword. Eventually, he consumed so many souls, he was able to call upon the legions of the undead. There's just something really cool about a ghost ship. The sea can be quiet, and when darkness falls or the fog comes in, you don't really know what's out there. The ocean back then was basically our Alien movies now. Can we get a game centered around Cervantes where you sail around in a ghost ship and just take people's souls? Kind of like Assassin's Creed 4, only ghostlier. Well, we don't have that, but we do have a fun character to play here. Soulcalibur has its supernatural characters, but he's one of the few that really brings it into the moveset. Mainly his ability to float and teleport. He can appear up in the air and behind his opponent to smash down on them, or he can flash backwards before spiraling forward with his blades. He also has a cool fighting style. One big sword, one pistol sword, which is actually historically accurate. These strange weapons, though rare, did exist in the 1500s, though the barrel was normally parallel to the blade. Sorry, I keep forgetting this isn't Weapons Month. He was finally slain by Ivy between Soulcaliburs 4 and 5, after which Soul Edge sent him to another dimension, but he's such a badass that he managed to sail out of the abyss and is now flesh and blood again. Sure, he's not a ghost currently, that's the same reason I didn't put Captain LeChuck from Monkey Island here, but the majority of the time we've known him, he's been a salty spook, so I think he's earned the spot. Now he's just an awesome guy who can still teleport? Wait, why can't he still do that? Did you think this through, Namco?
I shall never look back.
How do I choose just one ghost-type Pokemon? They're my favorite. They're some of the more creative in terms of design and lore. Yamask is actually a human soul? Phantump is the soul of a lost child? Should I be breeding these? Chandelure is my favorite Pokemon of all time, but for the sake of this list, it's less ghost and more possessed object. Same with Aegislash. And don't think I forgot about Giratina. I love that thing, but it's more of a dragon slash eldritch horror slash god of distortion. For this list, I think it's best to simplify the argument. Good old Gengar is the original battle-ready ghost type. Maybe he's not a departed human, but he's definitely an ectoplasmic being. He's the final stage of Ghastly and Haunter, who can be found haunting the Pokemon Tower in Lavender Town. Man, we really can't recapture how creepy that was back in the day, can we? monochrome graphics, unsettling 8-bit music, and the sudden realization that Pokemon could die while you're surrounded by possessed, moaning spirit maidens. Until you get the Sylph Scope, you can't even really deal with anything here. All the wild Pokemon are just these unidentified shadows, and your Pokemon are frozen in fear from the unknown. All the creepypastas, man. All of them. It was so weird too, because in Gen 1 there were only these 3 ghost types. They were incorporated to serve as a counter to the overpowered psychics, but the programmers forgot to make good ghost moves back in Gen 1, or make them super effective for that matter. And Gengar's secondary poison typing makes it so that they're actually weak to psychic. Yeah, Gen 1 was special like that. Still, this guy was a popular pick because there was just nothing else like him. And he only got better starting in Gen 2 with moves like Shadow Ball. The anime hit just the right blend of goofy and sinister, and he has a cool look with that Cheshire Cat smile. It's kind of off-putting and funny at the same time, like his design is a little too simple, you know? With only Misdreavus added in Gen 2, Gengar was the signature Pokemon for Gym Leader Morty and the Elite Four's Agatha. There's also the whole theory that Gengar is the ghost of Clefable since they have roughly the same outline, and their primary types can't affect one another. That made more sense before they changed Clefable to a fairy type, but it's still cool. What I find more interesting though is that ghost poison combo. Ghastly starts out as a gas cloud, so that might be it, but I always like to think that it was more like pestilence, and Gengar was the Pokemon world's little death type. It's said to turn invisible and feed off people's body heat. Maybe Gengar are the Grim Reapers of Pokemon, but that's just being silly. Also Dusknoir. In any case, Gengar is still a big player in the Pokemon world, with Gen 6 bringing out his Mega form. Oh yeah, I knew he was hiding something. Mega Gengar comes in with his own interesting strategies, mainly the ability Spirit Tag, which makes it impossible for your opponent to switch out. Add that with Gengar's access to Perish Song. See? He's the death Pokemon! And since your opponent can't retreat, you can just wait 2 turns and recall Gengar at the last instant. Sure, you can knock him out with a Dark type or another Mega, or a Stiff Breeze, but if the target is a support or a tank, they're executed. This strategy was so low that Mega Gengar was banished from several tournaments. Fine, said Gengar. I'll just whack out Pokken Tournament, where he brings out his own bizarre and at times nightmarish fighting style. Man, I love this game. Oh, and it has Chandelure too. That will always be weird. Of all the unfinished business a fandom can work towards, the most popular is revenge, to make suffer those who wronged you. Nowhere is that better personified than League of Legends' Kalista, the Spear of Vengeance. In life, Kalista was a general from a kingdom now forgotten. She served alongside the captain of the knights, a man named Hecarim. When the queen was poisoned, Kalista was tasked to seek a cure from the fabled Blessed Isle, and though she did find a way that the sick may be healed, she returned too late to save the queen. The king suspected Kalista was hiding information and invaded the Blessed Isle. Kalista tried to keep peace between the kingdom and the Isle, but she was backstabbed by Hecarim, and the powers of the island were corrupted, transforming the once holy land into a realm of undeath called the Shadow Isles. In the process, Hecarim was transformed into the man-beast we know today, and Kalista's anger gave rise to a powerful Banshee, and the realm's new avatar of Retribution. This new specter takes Kalista's form and battle prowess, but the fiber of her being contains the souls of all of those that have been wronged in some similar way. Eagle-eyed fans first got a hint of Kalista's release when a strange fog started appearing on certain champions' lore pages, all of who were being marked as Kalista's targets. These included those that have deceived others in some way: LeBlanc, Twisted Fate, Lissandra, Xerath, Cassiopeia, Zed, and of course, Hecarim. I love when one champion can tie a bunch of others together. Speaking of relationships, Kalista is that one rare marksman with moves designed to complement a support, not the other way around. She starts with an item called the Black Spear, which she can give to an ally to create a bond for the entire game, as if they're her pin to the living realm. When bonded to a support, Kalista can gain full experience and gold credit for a support's kills, and with her ultimate, fire them like a missile. Her mastery of the spear rivals Jin Zhao, and mirrors the single-mindedness of her vitriol missions. Even her impalpable physiology factors into her playstyle, with an easy way to pass through walls, the ability to create ghostly sentries, and those rending attacks that stick through opponents until activated. She even has this weird mechanic where she can hop while auto-attacking, which makes her incredibly slippery in duels. Melee bruisers will feel like they're grasping at thin air trying to get to her. Whether she's haunting bottom lane or driving home a teamfight, Kalista's one champion that won't stay dead. Well, I guess that's true of all champions respawning and all that. Never mind.
Such is the price of betrayal.
If not for Pac-Man's enemies, the boos from the Mario series would be gaming's most famous ghosts. Since Super Mario Bros. 3, they've peeved and tormented us. In fun family titles like this, it's always fine to just throw ghosts in without implying that they're actually dead people. But if Goombario is to be believed, they are in fact the souls of the departed. There's your evidence, ghost hunters. As legend states, Miyamoto envisioned these guys after Takashi Tezuka's wife, who was always very shy but could really yell at Tezuka in private. Following suit, boos are aggressive when your back is turned but modestly hide when looked at. Ghosts that are scared of you, that's adorable. Their mischievousness grew over time though, and they eventually overcame their crippling social anxiety to play tennis and ruin friendships in Mario Party. This new leaf may never have been turned if they didn't have the guidance of a dedicated leader, the sinister King Boo. Making his first appearance in Luigi's Mansion, the Bully Baron has been a collaborator with Bowser for years. Unlike Bowser's ham-fisted attempts to defeat Mario, however, King Boo easily lured Mario into a trap and effortlessly sealed him into a painting. What's so hard about that, Koopa? For a time, I even thought he was Bowser, attacking from beyond the grave. When Luigi finally reached him, he takes the dragon's form, giving gamers their first real look at Bowser's modern design. But this is actually just an illusion. King Boo likes to use magic, trickery, or just a crap ton of underlings to get the job done. And he would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for that meddling Ouija. Don't think the king gave up though. Like Petey Piranha, Nintendo started sticking King Boo everywhere. He got his revenge on Luigi, trapping him in a painting in Super Mario 64 DS, and he's even matched blows with Super Princess Peach. He was playable in Double Dash, Mario Kart Wii, and the baseball games, hosted a map in Mario Party 8, and served as a boss in Mario Party 9 and 10. There's also this weird boss fight in Sunshine, but some research yields that he's not even called King Boo in the Japanese game. He's made of goops and dopier than usual. I like to think that this King Boo was painted up by Bowser Jr. to try to mimic the real deal. King Boo'd never be caught with a dumb roulette gimmick. He's a strategist, not a gambler. His grand return was in Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, where he used a new and improved magic crown to shatter the Dark Moon and drive all the ghosts in Evershade Valley into a cantankerous rage. The final clash with him shows off the fullest extent of his illusionary powers yet. He pulls Luigi into a paranormal dimension and, well, things get trippy. He's the perfect nemesis for the little brother. Mario is brave and valiant, so he gets Bowser to match strength with. Luigi is fearful and more of a thinker, so King Boo gives him something to overcome, but also a challenge that Mario would struggle with. The hero fights the dragon, the thinker fights his fears. Without King Boo, Luigi would merely be the green Mario. We take these characters for granted sometimes. From Metal Gear Solid 3, we have the Sorrow. We've just hit about every other member of the Cobra unit. Now I just have to find a countdown to talk about the Pain. Top 10 B-Wheelers? Well, anyway. Named for his intense sympathy for his enemies, the Sorrow was a scout and spirit medium for the Cobra unit, though by the time you meet him, he's quite dead. He was also the lover of the Joy, aka the Boss, the same woman who trained Naked Snake. The Sorrow and Boss had a child together that was taken from them by the enigmatic philosophers as a bargaining chip, and the lovebirds eventually landed on opposite sides of a war. To protect their son, the Sorrow pleaded that the Boss kill him in battle, in a gesture very similar to what the Boss would eventually ask of Snake. Their son went on to be Revolver Ocelot, so depending on how you look at it, the sacrifice was not in vain. Still, the Boss's return to Solino Yarsk was enough to wake the Sorrow's unfulfilled spirit. Not necessarily a vengeful spirit, but a very busy one. Often accompanied by rainfall, the Sorrow offers friendly advice to Snake throughout his operations, But like everyone else in the game, it can be hard to tell what his true motives are, especially since you eventually have to fight him. Sort of. After a jump from a waterfall, Snake wakes to find himself in the spirit world. Here, the sorrow taunts him all the while summoning the spirits of the dead, specifically all the people Snake has killed so far on the mission. This means that the player has a lot of influence on how difficult this fight is. If you've been mostly non-lethal, you can face as little as 4 spirits, the bosses you fought. But if you prefer to shoot first and ask questions never, well, you're gonna have a bad time. Sorry, Toby Fox, Hideo did it first. I wouldn't call this a fun fight, but it might make you consider being stealthier on your next run. Interestingly, this depiction of the spirit realm is reminiscent of the Sanzu River, which in Japanese Buddhist mythology is the river that the dead must cross to reach the afterlife, leading to one of 3 crossings depending on their virtue in life. Needless to say, the sorrow is judging you. You can find him in a ton of other scenes if you're sharp. He displays the frequency to Snake's holding cell during the interrogation, has a countdown after you plant the explosives in the base, and after Volgan dies, the sorrow can be found smiling. Wait, Volgan was struck by lightning, and the sorrow is always around when it's raining. Is it possible that the sorrow is responsible for Volgan's death? Geez, maybe he is a vengeful spirit. After the final bout with the boss, you look around and you can find the sorrow and the boss, as ghosts, finally together at peace. So I guess they got a happy ending, though the sorrow did show up one more time in Metal Gear Solid 4. You know Screaming Mantis, and how it ends with a cameo from Psycho Mantis? Well, if you hold down the L1 button, you can see the sorrow is the real reason that Psycho got chased away. He's a cameo hidden in a cameo. Maybe Kojima is just being bizarre, but I don't want to dismiss this character and his impact on Snake. It was him who cryptically hinted that he'd be killed by his sons, which explains a lot of his future actions. And why is it that the sorrow is always smiling if the joy is always sullen? It's like the theme of the whole series. Don't pity the dead, Snake. Pity the living. How exactly do you go about putting a ghost in a traditional fighting game? It must take a lot of thought given their imperial weightlessness. With Cervantes they eased off the sublime qualities, and with Gengar they leaned into the absurdity, but I find Hisako from Killer Instinct to be a perfect balance. Hisako, like Sae, is an Onryo, a Japanese spirit of wrath. She was born as Chiharu, daughter of a Ronin. Though her father had given up a life of combat to become a farmer, he still taught her self-defense, training her into an unparalleled Onabu geisha. The family lived in relative comfort until it was ravaged by bandits, and Chiharu died to the horsemen, taking out dozens single-handedly until finally succumbing to her wounds. That would have been enough recompense for her to sleep peacefully. Her village survived the attack, and some townsfolk swore that they could sometimes see their protector's ghost standing at the shrine. They called her Hisako, meaning everlasting child. But Arya couldn't help but meddle with the paranormal phenomena and desecrated the shrine just to see what would happen. Thus, Hisako awoke and painted a trail of blood from Japan all the way to Ultratech's front door. Fighting Hisako is unsettling. She stands ajar, looking more like a cosplay shoot than a fighter until she suddenly charges with deceptive speed. While her body can be punched and sliced, her physical form is tenuous. She melts into floors, springs off walls, and can shadow attack through projectiles with her father's Naginata. With her wrath meter maxed out, she jitters and contorts with a green static, confirming that she's basically the girl from the ring. Some of her coolest moves are her command grabs, including Possession where she sucks foes towards her and seizes around them for a second, and Influence where she tricks an opponent into falling onto her blade. Maximilian Dude was even able to game this technique to beat story mode on its highest difficulty, which has one of the most sophisticated learning AI in gaming history. I'd play her more myself if I wasn't so easy to jump scare. No matter how many times I watch her victory pose, I'm always unnerved.
Supreme victory!
If you haven't played Bioshock Infinite, I have to recommend that you skip ahead in the video to avoid spoilers. I know saying that is a spoiler in and of itself, because now you know that the game involves a ghost to some degree. Let me just say that it's different than you might think. Now get out of here, you scamps. Are they gone? Okay, good. Let's spoil the hell out of this. Not that Lady Comstock is the biggest piece of the trans-dimensional puzzle that is Bioshock, but she leaves a lasting impression. Annabelle Comstock was the First Lady of Columbia. She was married to the prophet Zachary Hale Comstock before her untimely death, after which the adoring public immortalized her as a saint. That purportedly makes her Elizabeth's mother. We're told that Elizabeth has a miraculous one-day birth, and that afterwards the First Lady was assassinated by revolutionaries. This actually couldn't be further from the truth. In Slate's locker, Elizabeth finds the lady's journal, which explains how Lady Comstock hated the child and wanted it killed. From this point, Elizabeth despises her late mother, blaming her for a life locked away in a tower. This loathing gets so bad that Elizabeth is willing to cut off her dead mom's hand to trick a fingerprint scanner, but things don't go as planned. Zachary Comstock uses a remote mini siphon to hijack Elizabeth's reality-bending powers, which rouses Lady Comstock's restless spirit in the form of the Siren. Booker takes it surprisingly well. There's a lot going on here. Bioshock doesn't normally do boss fights. This is the game that ends in an enemy gauntlet, and I can kind of see why. The Siren is cheap as all hell. Her gimmick is the ability to revive dead enemies and send them at Booker. Sounds out of place for this game, but it actually follows the game's logic pretty well. Essentially, Annabelle is using Elizabeth's powers, shuffling the soldiers from alternate realities where they aren't dead yet. The ghosts on this list have all been dead people, with 3 possible exceptions, but here we have a fascinating alternative. Elizabeth has the power to alter and create realities, and with her powers overloaded, she formed this paradoxical creature composed of Elizabeth's own confused rage towards her mother. As Elizabeth herself explains, it's half her mother, but half herself. Whether or not you believe in real ghosts, we all get this feeling of being haunted by something, people, memories, regrets, etc. That's something that comes from within. Here, we have the unique opportunity to physically manifest those feelings. The only way Elizabeth can quell her own nightmare is to understand it, following the ghost as it reveals tears that answer some of the game's biggest questions. We learn about the Lutessa's role in this and part of Elizabeth's true origin. Most importantly, we learn that Annabelle wasn't a saint, nor was she a monster. She was a human being who made a mistake. You'll have to fight her 3 times to learn all this, and it's a disaster without a rocket launcher. But it beats an exposition dump.
Find out, child. Find out.
Must have been unconscious for a while. My head feels fuzzy, kind of like I'm swimming through darkness. When I came to, there was a woman standing there. A woman I don't know. At least, I don't think I know her. And then there was a man with a gun. I don't know him either. Well, probably not anyway. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who can just stand back and watch a poor woman get shot. But I just have one little problem. I'm already dead myself.
Ghost Trick Phantom Detective. Holy smokes, this game is good. If you ever wanted to feel like a ghost, in a fantastic mystery puzzle game no less, get this game. You don't even need to find the original DS version. It's on iOS now, the first 2 chapters are free, and you can get the rest of the game for only $10. Alright, that's enough advertising. Let's look at my top ghost of all time. You play as this enigmatic figure. Oh, keeping this spoiler free is gonna be difficult, but damn it, I don't want to spoil this game for you. You see, ghosts don't always retain their memories after they've been killed. He soon learns his name is Sissel, but he doesn't know who he was or how he died. Sissel appears as his human self in dialogue, but in reality he's just this astral blob. He isn't able to communicate with this gunman, much less detain him. What he can do, though, is move through objects like a poltergeist and minutely influence them in ways that, to you and me, might seem like random happenstance. Turning a lamp on and off, opening an umbrella, stuff like that. That's actually a lot of power, but it has its limits, and you have to watch a poor woman die. Fortunately, a second ghost named Ray, who inhabits a desk lamp, just go with it, explains to Sissel his most useful power, the power to save people. By connecting to a recent victim, Sissel can travel back in time 4 minutes before their death and try to prevent it. That's where the real puzzles come in. The sad thing is, while Sissel can save these innocent people, the one person he can't save is himself. And as the lamp explains, all ghosts pass on from this world at sunrise. Rattled but determined, Sissel vows to use these last few hours to find out who he was. And believe me, a lot can happen in one night. Like, a lot. The puzzles and storytelling get insanely clever as you learn more rules of the ghost world and unwrap a web of intrigue 10 years in the making. Sometimes you're zipping through the phone lines and moving heavy machinery, other times you're utterly helpless. There are these moments where you just need someone to look at a book or pick up a piece of paper, and all you can do is tepidly point them in the right direction. It makes you feel so isolated. Sissel's a great character too. Though he's really doing it for his own sake at first, he gets invested in the lives and deaths of the people he comes in contact with. He can even speak telepathically to those who've had these near-death experiences, forming relationships with tons of colorful characters, including this Pomeranian named Missile. You don't know it yet, but this dog's a champion. I'd love to keep going on about Sissel and Ghost Trick, all of these awesome moments of phantasmal creativity, some other characters who could also make a case for this list, but I gotta keep my mouth shut. Let me just say this. To explain this game's premise to you without spoiling it, I had to lie to you multiple times. I'm the Green Scorpion, and though these 10 individuals may have died, they're keeping the party rolling anyway, and I plan to do the same. I'll be back next week to sink my teeth into another countdown. See you guys next time.
Come on, lady, give me some space.